In a dramatic turn of events, President Donald Trump has signaled a potential shift in his administration's approach to international trade, particularly in relation to tariffs targeting various countries. As markets react to the swirling uncertainty of U.S. trade policy, Trump announced a 90-day pause on most country-specific tariffs, a decision that has drawn mixed responses from lawmakers and international leaders alike. The tariff landscape is evolving rapidly, with the president's latest strategy featuring a universal 10% tariff for all nations except China, which faces a staggering 145% duty on its imports. This escalation was confirmed by a White House official and marks a significant turning point in the ongoing trade war that has sparked concerns over economic repercussions both domestically and abroad. "If we don't reach deals with countries, higher tariffs will return," Trump warned during a cabinet meeting, leaving the door open for further adjustments based on the outcomes of trade negotiations. While the 90-day pause has been portrayed as a tactical retreat, it follows a market sell-off that many analysts attribute to the unpredictability surrounding Trump's tariff policies. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent attempted to downplay the market volatility, asserting that we will end up in a place of great certainty over the next 90 days as negotiations progress. However, the immediate reaction from investors has been far from positive, with the stock market experiencing significant losses shortly after the announcement. Critics of Trump's tariff strategy have voiced concerns that the abrupt policy changes could lead to a recession. Former Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen described these measures as the worst self-inflicted wound that I have ever seen, emphasizing that the U.S. economy is now facing its highest average tariff rates since the Great Depression. Economists warn that the uncertainties surrounding tariffs are likely to dampen economic growth, with projections suggesting a potential hit to GDP in both the U.S. and its trading partners, including Germany and Indonesia. Amidst this turmoil, international responses have varied. The European Union announced that it would hold off on implementing retaliatory tariffs for 90 days, seeking to give negotiations a chance to unfold. Meanwhile, China has expressed its unwillingness to engage in talks under the current conditions, maintaining that it will fight to the end against perceived economic bullying from the U.S. This hardline stance has prompted Trump to further layer on tariffs, escalating tensions in what many are calling a trade war. Farmers in the U.S. are particularly anxious about the long-term implications of the escalating tariffs. Caleb Ragland, president of the American Soybean Association, warned that continued trade hostilities with China could lead to significant losses for U.S. agriculture, particularly in states that supported Trump in the last election. The agricultural sector, heavily reliant on exports to China, now faces an uncertain future as trade negotiations unfold. As the Trump administration prepares for negotiations with over 15 countries, the impact of the tariffs on various sectors remains a focal point of discussion. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett indicated that the administration is evaluating trade deal offers and that any significant changes to tariff rates will depend on the outcomes of these discussions. However, many in Congress are voicing their concerns over the lack of a coherent strategy, with some lawmakers pushing for greater oversight of tariff implementation. Looking ahead, the next 90 days will be crucial in determining the future of U.S. trade policy. As markets wrestle with the implications of Trump's tariff strategies, the administration's ability to navigate these complex negotiations will be a key factor in shaping the global economic landscape. Whether this pause will lead to more sustainable trade relationships or simply prolong the uncertainty remains to be seen, but the stakes are undeniably high for businesses and consumers alike. In a rapidly evolving trade landscape, recent developments surrounding President Donald Trump's tariffs have sent shockwaves through global markets and prompted a flurry of political maneuvering. On April 10, 2025, Trump announced a temporary reduction in tariffs for over 75 countries, aiming to ease tensions and restore confidence among investors. However, the situation remains complex, particularly with China facing a staggering increase in tariffs that now total 145%. As the implications of these actions unfold, both U.S. and international markets are responding with uncertainty and volatility. Following Trump's announcement of a 90-day tariff reduction for most trading partners, U.S. stock markets initially surged only to retract sharply as the reality of the ongoing trade tensions with China set in. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by over 700 points or approximately 1.8%, while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq saw declines of 2% and 2.6% respectively. Analysts have noted that while the tariff pause offered a momentary reprieve, fears about the long-term effects of Trump's tariffs, especially against China, have re-emerged. Trump's tariffs on Chinese imports have escalated dramatically, with the new 145% levies targeting a wide array of goods. This measure follows China's own retaliatory tariffs and has led to heightened tensions between the two economic giants. During a cabinet meeting, Trump acknowledged the transition problems associated with his policies but remained optimistic about their long-term benefits. "There'll be a transition cost and transition problems, but in the end it's going to be a beautiful thing," he stated. The European Union has taken a cautious approach, announcing a pause on its retaliatory measures as it seeks to engage in constructive negotiations with the U.S. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the importance of negotiations, stating, "We took note of the announcement by President Trump. We want to give negotiations a chance. This temporary halt reflects a desire to stabilize relations amid a backdrop of increasing skepticism toward U.S. trade policies." Public sentiment in the U.S. has also shifted, with a Pew Research survey indicating that a majority of Americans, 52%, believe the tariffs on Chinese goods will be detrimental to both the country and themselves personally. This sentiment is particularly pronounced among Democrats, with 80% expressing concerns over the tariffs compared to just 24% of Republicans. As the economic ramifications continue to ripple through various sectors, business owners such as Kate Nelson of the Greenwood Shop in California are already feeling the pinch, citing a potential doubling of costs due to the tariffs. Amidst these developments, lawmakers are also taking action. A bipartisan bill introduced by Representatives Pat Fallon and Ro Khanna aims to ensure that U.S. government technology procurement is free from Chinese influence. Fallon stated, "With the rising threat posed by Chinese aggression, it's critical that the Department of Defense secure its vital infrastructure." This legislative push underscores the growing unease regarding China's technological ambitions and its implications for U.S. national security. In parallel, the fallout from Trump's tariff announcements has prompted a new investigation into potential insider trading related to his policy reversals. Democratic Senators Adam Schiff and Ruben Gallego have called for answers regarding whether White House officials had prior knowledge of the tariff changes that influenced stock market behavior. As the situation continues to evolve, the interplay between U.S. trade policies and international relations remains complex. With ongoing negotiations and potential retaliatory measures from affected countries including China, the landscape is volatile. Investors and policymakers alike are keenly watching how these dynamics will shape the global economy in the coming months. The next steps taken by the Trump administration and its counterparts will be critical in determining whether a more stable trade environment can be achieved or if further tensions will escalate, potentially leading to a more profound economic fallout. In a rapidly escalating trade war, the United States and China are heading toward a monumental split that threatens to disrupt the global economy. As tariffs soar to unprecedented heights, the long-standing economic relationship between these two superpowers, which has been in place for decades, is unraveling at an alarming pace. The latest developments reveal a contentious back-and-forth that has left economists and global markets on edge, with the stakes higher than ever. The trade tensions initially ignited during President Trump's first term have intensified dramatically. In just a matter of days, Trump's administration has implemented a staggering 145% tariff on Chinese imports, following China's retaliatory measures that raised its own tariffs to 84% on U.S. goods. This rapid escalation has taken many by surprise, surpassing the gradual tariff increases seen between 2018 and 2019 and signaling a willingness from both sides to engage in fierce economic warfare. Orville Schell, director of the Center on U.S.-China Relations at Asia Society, succinctly captured the gravity of the situation. We are approaching a monumental train wreck breakup. The implications of these tariffs extend beyond the U.S. and China. They threaten to destabilize economies worldwide as both nations are pivotal players in global trade. For years, American companies benefited from cheap manufacturing costs in China while the Chinese economy grew in part due to U.S. investment and consumer demand. Now both economies are bracing for the fallout from this trade rift. As the tariffs rise, the economic landscape is shifting dramatically. While the U.S. maintains a trade surplus with China, the latest tariffs are expected to significantly impact American consumers with predictions of rising inflation and job losses. Carl Weinberg, chief economist at High Frequency Economics, noted that he believed a recession had already begun, forecasting a marked economic decline in the second quarter. "You can't model this," said Stephen Okun, chief executive of APAC Advisors, as he pondered the broader implications of countries being forced to choose between allegiance to the U.S. or China. On the other side of the Pacific, China finds itself in a precarious position. Already grappling with economic challenges including a property market collapse and sluggish consumer confidence, the country is now faced with the daunting task of reorienting its trade strategies. In response to U.S. tariffs, China has begun diversifying its trade partnerships, shifting exports towards Southeast Asia and Belt and Road countries. Despite these efforts, the impact of diminished trade with the U.S., which accounted for over $400 billion in goods last year, poses a significant threat to China's economic stability. While Beijing has vowed to fight to the end, the reality is that the Chinese economy is not immune to the damaging effects of this trade war. Analysts have raised concerns that the tariffs will exacerbate existing economic woes, leading to higher unemployment and further deflation. Goldman Sachs recently downgraded its growth forecast for China, projecting a growth rate of just 4% for the year, down from previous estimates. The country's reliance on exports means that tariffs are likely to sap demand, leaving China's economy vulnerable and potentially leading to a painful divorce from its largest trading partner. As the U.S. and China continue their tit-for-tat tariff exchanges, the global economy watches closely, aware that the ramifications will be felt far beyond their borders. For small businesses like GLA Agricultural Electronics in California, the sudden rupture in trade relationships poses existential threats. John K. Thomas, the company's owner, expressed the dire consequences. "We were close to being priced out of the Chinese market. At 84%, we are completely shut out. With no immediate resolution in sight, the future remains uncertain." The escalating tariffs could not only lead to increased costs for consumers and businesses but could also push the global economy into recession. As both nations dig in their heels, the world waits to see how long they can withstand the pressure before one side blinks. As it stands, both the U.S. and China appear entrenched in their positions, each believing that they can endure the economic toll longer than the other. The unfolding trade war underscores a shift in the global economic order, one where the U.S. and China are not just competitors but rivals vying for supremacy, with both countries preparing for a protracted battle. The question remains, how much economic bitterness are both sides, and indeed the world, prepared to swallow? The coming months will be crucial in determining whether a path toward negotiation and resolution can be forged, or if the two giants are destined for an ever-deepening divide. In an era marked by rapid technological advancements and geopolitical tensions, the Indo-Pacific region is increasingly becoming a focal point of international security discussions. Recent reports from the U.S. Department of Defense have raised alarms over China's military buildup, which poses significant threats to regional stability. As military capabilities expand, the implications for global security are profound, prompting calls for strategic responses from the United States and its allies. According to the U.S. Department of Defense, China's military expansion is not merely a regional concern but a direct challenge to the rules-based international order. The Pentagon's latest assessment highlights an increase in military assets aimed at asserting dominance in the South China Sea and surrounding areas. This buildup includes advanced missile systems, increasing naval capabilities, and a growing arsenal of cyber warfare tools. China's military modernization and aggressive posture are reshaping the strategic landscape of the Indo-Pacific, stated a senior defense official, emphasizing the need for vigilant monitoring and preparedness. The ramifications of China's military expansion are manifold. Not only does it threaten the sovereignty of neighboring countries, but it also disrupts vital trade routes, which are crucial for global commerce. The U.S. and allied nations are now faced with the dual challenge of countering China's influence while ensuring that diplomatic channels remain open. Experts believe that a robust response, including enhanced military alliances and joint exercises, is essential to deter potential aggression. Amid these developments, the race for technological supremacy is intensifying, particularly in fields like artificial intelligence (AI) and biotechnology. A recent analysis by the Foundation for Defense of Democracies underscores the critical importance of balancing innovation with national security. As AI capabilities rapidly evolve, the potential for misuse in military applications raises ethical and strategic questions. To maintain a competitive edge, the U.S. must prioritize both technological innovation and the safeguarding of its national interests, the report asserts. Furthermore, concerns are being raised about corporate ties to China's military ambitions. A report from Reuters revealed that Intel's CEO has invested in numerous Chinese companies, some of which maintain connections to the Chinese military. This revelation has sparked debate over the ethical implications of U.S. investment in foreign companies with questionable affiliations. National security experts argue that such investments could inadvertently bolster China's military capabilities and hinder U.S. strategic interests. As the competition between the U.S. and China escalates, the biotech sector also emerges as a critical battleground. A piece in The Hill points out that the U.S. cannot afford to lag behind China in biotech innovation, particularly in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Biotech is the new frontier for national security, and the U.S. must lead in this arena to ensure its global standing, the article emphasizes. Reflecting a growing consensus on the need for strategic investment and regulatory scrutiny in this vital sector. In conclusion, the evolving landscape of Sino-American relations necessitates a multifaceted approach that encompasses military readiness, technological innovation, and ethical investment practices. The future of the Indo-Pacific region hinges on the ability of the U.S. and its allies to respond effectively to China's assertiveness. As these dynamics unfold, the global community must remain vigilant, recognizing that the stakes are not merely regional but fundamentally impact international security and stability. The coming years will be crucial as nations navigate this complex interplay of power, technology, and diplomacy. In a striking development within the ongoing U.S.-China trade tensions, the China Film Administration announced plans to significantly reduce the number of American films screened in China. This decision, framed as a response to President Donald Trump's recent imposition of escalated tariffs, highlights the growing friction not just in trade but also in cultural exchanges between the two nations. The Chinese regulatory body described the U.S. tariffs as excessive and warned that such economic measures could further sour the Chinese audience's perception of American cinema. The U.S. government's erroneous practice of imposing excessive tariffs on China is likely to further diminish the Chinese audience's favorable perception of American films, the administration stated. This sentiment reflects a broader strategy by Beijing to assert its cultural sovereignty and push back against what it sees as economic bullying from Washington. On April 9, just a day before this announcement, the U.S. raised tariffs on imports from China to an unprecedented 125%, bringing the effective tariff rate to approximately 136%. While Trump has paused similar tariffs on other countries, China remains a focal point for his administration's trade policy, prompting sharp criticism from Chinese officials who accuse the U.S. of unfair practices. The cultural impact of these economic decisions could be profound, potentially stifling Hollywood's significant market presence in one of its largest overseas markets. Hollywood executives are understandably concerned about the financial implications of this decision. China has become an essential source of revenue for American film studios, with blockbuster films often relying on Chinese audiences for a substantial portion of their box office earnings. The potential reduction in American films screened in China could lead to significant financial setbacks for these studios, further complicating the already challenging landscape of global film distribution. Moreover, this reduction in film imports is emblematic of a broader narrative where cultural and economic exchanges are increasingly viewed through the lens of geopolitical tension. As both nations grapple with their respective national interests, the entertainment industry finds itself caught in the crossfire. Looking ahead, the relationship between the US and China remains precarious, with potential repercussions extending beyond the film industry. As both nations navigate this period of confrontation, the coming months will likely reveal how cultural diplomacy can either bridge gaps or deepen divides. The global community will be watching closely, as the outcomes of these economic and cultural battles could shape international relations for years to come. As tensions escalate, the question remains: will dialogue replace tariffs, or will this cultural standoff intensify, further isolating Hollywood from one of its most lucrative markets?